In the heat of the moment, Liang Yuanze swiftly abandoned the items he held, forcibly pulling He Yan away from the perilous scene unfolding before them. Regrettably, it proved to be too little, too late. A Jiang, wielding a deadly firearm, pointed the ominous black muzzle directly at Liang Yuanze's forehead. His voice remained cold and unwavering as he uttered, "Step back." He Yan grasped the dire reality. A Jiang wasn't here for mere intimidation, he was fully prepared to pull the trigger and end Liang Yuanze's life with a single, decisive shot. Without a second thought, she seized Liang Yuanze from behind and uttered hoarsely, "Yuanze, let's step back." She forcefully disentangled herself from Liang Yuanze's grasp and slowly shifted her gaze toward Fu Xinqing, who occupied a seat on the nearby sofa. A wicked smile tugged at the corners of Fu Xinqing's lips as he sneered, "It's been quite some time, He Yan." He Yan's mind raced, a surge of fear and determination merging into a desperate idea: they had to survive, especially Liang Yuanze. Liang Yuanze, standing steadfastly by her side, appeared to sense her growing unease. Despite the looming threat of a Zhang's weapon, he attempted to shield He Yan from potential harm. This audacious move elicited an icy glare from Fu Xinqing, who curled his lip maliciously and parted his thin lips to address a Jiang, saying, "A Jiang." However, He Yan, intimately familiar with Fu Xinqing's psychology, swiftly interjected almost instinctively, "Fu Xinqing." Her voice resonated with conviction as she broke free from Liang Yuanze's protective embrace and confronted Fu Xinqing directly. "Instruct a Jiang to leave the room. There's a matter I'd rather not discuss in the presence of others." Fu Xinqing regarded He Yan and posed a seemingly nonchalant question, "Just the two of us?" "And Mr. Liang?" He Yan remained composed as she replied, "No, he stays. He's aware of the situation." Fu Xinqing's lips curled into a sardonic smirk. "He Yan, do you genuinely believe there's any chance of escape in this situation?" With gritted teeth, He Yan retorted, "Escape is not my intention. Right now, I'm here to negotiate with you." Fu Xinqing nonchalantly inclined his head toward the door, instructing a Jiang, "Step outside and keep watch." A Jiang nodded before casting a final, vigilant glance at Liang Yuanze. He then exited the room, firmly clutching his firearm. Fu Xinqing reclined leisurely, directing his gaze upward at He Yan as he said, "Continue, He Yan. Let's see what tales your agile tongue can weave, and whether I'll be swayed by your deceit once more." He Yan, overcome by the tension of the situation, involuntarily swallowed hard and began, "Yuanze, please inform him about who we found in the Western Kingdom." Even without direct eye contact, Liang Yuanze understood the unspoken urgency in He Yan's plea. He responded promptly, "Luo Pei, Dr. Adelman." As expected, He Yan noticed subtle changes in Fu Xinqing's demeanor. Within her own mind, she had decided not to divulge further details but instead extract a response from him. She locked eyes with Fu Xinqing and continued, "Fu Xinqing, or perhaps I should address you as Shenjijie. Do you truly believe you obliterated all traces of your original fingerprint? Do you think that transitioning from Shenjijie to Fu Xinqing left no discernible evidence behind?" Fu Xinqing's countenance remained unruffled. "Proceed." He Yan, her resolve unyielding, proceeded to recount her fabricated story. "Shenjijie, I've meticulously gathered all the evidence at my disposal, including your fingerprints, photocopies of documents bearing your fingerprints, information later obtained from Dr. Luo Pei, and even the shadowy dealings of Fu Corporation. I've meticulously organized these into comprehensive files." A smirk curled across Fu Xinqing's lips as he regarded He Yan. He questioned her tauntingly, "Are you attempting to blackmail me, He Yan? However, are you certain that your arrangements truly pose a credible threat to me?" He Yan didn't respond immediately. After a prolonged pause, she finally uttered, "Shenjijie, I am exhausted. Profoundly exhausted. Let's agree to release each other. If you release me, I will reciprocate. As long as you refrain from interfering in our lives, I will refrain from utilizing this evidence. You may peacefully live as Fu Xinqing and let go of the burdens of the past." Fu Xinqing, however, couldn't help but chuckle. "Where have you secured this evidence?" He Yan responded confidently, "In a secure location. You won't locate it. I've entrusted it to the person I trust most." Fu Xinqing's smirk deepened, and he continued his taunting. "So, you've agreed to maintain regular contact, ensuring that if I don't receive your messages on schedule, this trusted individual of yours will release the evidence, correct?" He then sneered, "Is this trusted individual Tian?" He Yan suddenly froze, realizing how Fu Xinqing had managed to track her down. However, she was certain she had left behind no discernible trace. Before her departure to AGA, she had meticulously eliminated all evidence, from abandoning her mobile phone in an airport restroom to thoroughly destroying and disposing of Tian's ID card and bank card in a public garbage bin. Her complexion remained unchanged, but Liang Yuanze, by her side, couldn't help but demand sharply, "What's going on with Tian?" Fu Xinqing wore a faint smile and inquired calmly, "What do you think I've done to her?" Attempting to conceal her panic, He Yan threatened in a low voice, "Don't harm her. She's different from us. Her father wields great power, and if you cross her, her father won't spare you." Fu Xinqing nodded slowly, producing a photo from his pocket and showing it to Yan. The image displayed a couple, clearly close and evidently sharing an extraordinary bond. "She's my girlfriend now, and soon to be my fiancée, and eventually my wife," he stated with a gentle smile. He then asked He Yan, "Isn't the world rather small? It seems like fate, doesn't it?" He Yan couldn't help but tremble, and Liang Yuanze, standing behind her, held her hand tightly. A cynical smirk curved Fu Xinqing's lips as he continued, taunting her, "Are you certain you actually sent those items to Tian? Because she never received them. Which courier service did you use? Do you want to file a complaint?" Fixing his gaze on her, he added, "Ah Yan, you're certainly clever, but why do you treat me like a fool? Do you think I'd allow Luo Pei to retain my information? If you were in my position, would you? What else could you possibly know about Fu Corporation's shady dealings?" Having compelled He Yan to face him, Fu Xinqing's demeanor shifted suddenly. Without warning, Liang Yuanze erupted in anger and swung a punch at him. Fu Xinqing sneered and deftly sidestepped the blow, causing Liang Yuanze to lurch forward. He Yan instinctively cried out and attempted to rush to Liang Yuanze's aid, but Fu Xinqing seized her, gripping her arm tightly. Meanwhile, Liang Yuanze furiously charged at Fu Xinqing once more, shouting, "Release her." Fu Xinqing raised his foot without even glancing at Liang Yuanze. He delivered a swift and forceful kick, sending Liang Yuanze hurtling through the air. Returning his attention to He Yan, Fu Xinqing tightened his grasp on her and inquired mockingly, "Is this causing you heartache?" He Yan turned to face Fu Xinqing and implored, "Please don't involve others in our personal matters. Can we not?" "Others?" Fu Xinqing's eyes flashed with anger, but he restrained himself with a sneer and a hint of mockery. "Are you referring to Liang Yuanze? How can he be considered someone else? Isn't he your lover? Ah Yan, tell me, who drugged you? Who rescued you? Your heart belongs to him. How can you claim he's someone else?" In this manner, Fu Xinqing continued to hold He Yan hostage and ruthlessly pummeled Liang Yuanze. His assaults were relentless and brutal, clearly intent on ending Liang Yuanze's life. Yet, Liang Yuanze, equally determined, rose repeatedly to his feet, repeatedly challenging Fu Xinqing until he collapsed to the ground, unable to rise again. He Yan, consumed by anxiety, watched Liang Yuanze lying there, his condition uncertain, and her composure began to crumble. She bit down fiercely on Fu Xinqing's wrist. Unperturbed, Fu Xinqing allowed her to bite him, even lowering his head to draw closer and murmur, "Use more force, Yan. Only then can I be certain this isn't a dream." He Yan gradually released her grip and gazed at him strangely. "Shenjijie, you're a pervert." Fu Xinqing responded with a smile, "Yes, I am a pervert. I'm so abnormal that I can sleep in the bed you've slept in, inhaling the lingering scent on your pillow. How could I not be a pervert?" Observing the panic on her face, he smiled even more deeply and asked her softly, "Yan, tell me, what were you doing earlier? Were you intimately involved with Liang Yuanze? Did he bring you pleasure?" Pervert, she could only murmur, repeating the word. Fu Xinqing's smile persisted as he whispered, "This level of abnormality isn't enough. I need to do something even more extraordinary." He then lifted He Yan and tossed her onto the sofa, his intentions evident. He Yan struggled desperately and cried out, "Shenjijie, not in front of Yuanze, please. Stop your tears, they're futile," he responded in a cold tone. She halted in despair, tearfully pleading, "I beg you, Shenjijie, I'll go insane, truly insane." He paused, raising his gaze to her, and inquired, "You're going to go mad, aren't you?" "Yes, I'll go mad," she replied, tears streaming down her face. Gently tugging at the corner of his lip, he questioned her, "But have you considered that when you wanted to kill me, when you followed Liang Yuanze, I was driven to madness? But you said you love me," she looked at him helplessly, praying for his last vestige of humanity. "Shenjijie, did you forget? You said you love me, and if you truly loved me, you wouldn't do this to me." "Love?" He sneered at himself, his eyes welling with tears. "What is love? Ah Yan, you never taught me." Once, he had bared his heart entirely before her, gazing at her with such vulnerability, imploring her to teach him what love was. Yen, tell me what love is, he asked again. She couldn't speak, she only wept. Her free hands clutched his lapel tightly as she buried her head against his chest, nearly sobbing her heart out. She whispered his name and said, "Don't do this to me, Shinjijia. You'll drive me to death." Fu Xinqing slid his hand behind her head, lowering it to kiss her hair as he spoke in a strained voice, "Come with me, He Yen. Return with me." He compromised. He surrendered. He cared about nothing else, he only wanted her to return with him. Even if she wished to tear his heart from his chest, he'd offer her the knife, so long as she'd be willing to accompany him. He Yen remained silent, only sobbing. Not far away, Liang Yuanzi groaned. He awoke from his unconscious state and opened his eyes to find He Yen in Fu Xinqing's arms. His rage surged. Desperate and determined to confront everything, he charged toward them, calling Fu Xinqing a brute, attempting to throttle him. Fu Xinqing swiftly produced the gun from his leg wound and aimed it at Liang Yuanzi's head without hesitation. He Yen was terrified, rushing forward to clutch Fu Xinqing's waist and drag him back. She wept and implored, "I'll go with you. Don't harm him." Liang Yuanzi shouted angrily, "Yen Yen, don't plead for this animal, don't plead for him." He Yen finally ceased crying, holding Fu Xinqing's hand and asking, "Shinjijia, why are you here? To kill us, right? If that's the case, then shoot him and then kill me. But if you don't want me dead, don't harm him. Let him go. I'll go with you." Fu Xinqing addressed her in a cold tone, "If he's dead, and you're not alive, is that what you mean?" He Yen curved her lips and offered him a smile. With both hands, she firmly lifted his wrist, pointing the weapon at her forehead. She whispered, "Remove the safety, you just have to kill me, and it'll all be over." Hearing this, Fu Xinqing simply gritted his teeth. Fu Xinqing then lowered the gun and sighed, "All right, let's go. You're coming with me." He tossed his jacket to He Yen, saying, "Put it on." As he dragged Yen out of the apartment, Liang Yuanzi attempted to stop them, tears streaming down his face, and he begged Yen, Yen, please don't go, please come back." But He Yen paid him no attention, and they disappeared. Fu Xinqing released He Yan's hand and ordered his subordinates, "Put her in the car." He Yen sat in the car, pondering what would happen next. Could she escape again? Would she even have the chance to escape again? Or was this the end? Fu Xinqing got into the car, and there was a heavy silence during the drive. After a long while, Fu Xinqing spoke, his voice filled with menace, "He Yen, I will kill you one day." After a prolonged pause, she replied softly, "All right." She wasn't sure if it was because Liang Yuanzi had called the police or if Fu Xinqing had planned to return home all along. Instead of asking He Yen to return home through conventional routes, he took a detour and secretly brought her back. Then, he chartered a private plane and flew directly to Nanzhou. From the airport, Fu Xinqing took He Yen to a secluded villa. Within the vast villa, apart from a middle-aged maid, there were a few bodyguards who watched over her constantly. He Yen felt a sense of numbness creeping in. She had her meals on time 3 times a day, and when night fell, she would go to bed. Regardless of whether she could sleep or not, she lay there until dawn, and a new day began again. It wasn't until New Year's Eve that she took the initiative to approach the head of the guards, the one she found most amiable, and asked, "Could you please relay to Mr. Fu that I'd like to call my parents to let them know I'm safe?" The man gazed at her but didn't say yes or no. Fu Xinqing was monitoring all of He Yan's activities through CCTV. A week later, Fu Xinqing suddenly entered her room, and she was already in bed reading a book. He stopped beside her bed, silently observing her. Then, he unexpectedly threw a cell phone to her. She was taken aback and picked it up, discovering messages dated several days ago. The news detailed a criminal case in which an Asian couple was attacked at home, both killed, and their house exploded. He Yan's hand trembled uncontrollably, and even the phone slipped from her grasp. She raised her head to stare at him, her lips quivering as if trying to speak but unable to find the words. Fu Xinqing cynically curled the corners of his lips, saying, "Don't look at me like that. I'm more trustworthy than you. Liang Yuanzi didn't die. What perished were 2 imposters, 2 Japanese tourists." He chuckled and added, "But Liang Yuanzi is as good as dead. His memory has been wiped, and he will undergo plastic surgery to start anew. He'll forget you and everything about your past and embark on a new life." She stood there in shock for a long time before she could muster a voice and softly inquire, "Is that true?" He raised an eyebrow, nodded, and smiled, "Yes, once he's fully integrated back into normal life, I might take you to see him." What do you think? Maybe you could attend his wedding when he finds a new lover and gets married. She lowered her gaze but, after a while, smiled and said, that's good. Thank you, Fu Shenshin. He looked up at her face and questioned, thank you. With a smile, she whispered, yes, thank you. If he can live peacefully, it doesn't matter if he doesn't remember me. Fu Shenshin turned around and gazed at her with a sneer, asking, what? You want to become a walking corpse after losing everything, don't you? He Yen met his gaze calmly and inquired, how do you want me to act then? Should I be in pain or cry, or do you want me to fight you, to bite you to release my anger? Fu Shenshin, what should I do to make you feel better? Don't expect me to guess, just tell me. I'll do my best to meet your desires. As he rose from the bed, Fu Shenshin sneered, all right, I'll just say it. He walked toward the door, paused abruptly, and remarked, oh, by the way, regarding your parents, don't make any calls to inform them of your safety. They believe you're dead. After her conversation with Fu Shenshin, He Yen remained calm. She continued to eat and go to bed on time. On the evening of the 18th day of the first month, Fu Shenshin returned. He went straight to He Yen and said, get up, change your clothes, and go out with me. She didn't refuse, obediently got up, found clothes to wear, and casually asked him, where are we going? What kind of style should I dress in? He stood at the door with one hand in his pocket and smiled faintly, a mountain villa, whatever style you like. Oh, a villa. It should be stylish then, she mused to herself. She selected a small, slim black skirt from her closet, compared it in front of her body, and turned to him with heavy makeup on her face, saying with a smile, all right, let's go. When He Yen arrived with Fu Shenshin at the villa, someone among the group welcomed them with a loud smile, oh, thanks to our foolishness, we've prepared a beautiful girl for Brother Xing. Look, Brother Xing has brought her himself. Suddenly, Xiao Wu's voice came from the crowd, you better keep quiet because this matter shouldn't leak today. If you blurt something out, Brother Xian's peace of mind at home might be disturbed. Yen thought, peace of mind at home, he must be talking about Tian. Fu Shenshin pulled Yen closer and said, today, meet everyone. This is your older sister, just in case you didn't know. Xiao Wu offered Yen a drink and said, Sister Yen, it's really been a long time since we've seen each other. Let me treat you to a glass. Baldhead also raised his glass, saying, Sister Yen, it's been a long time since we've seen each other. Let me toast to you. Fu Shenshin raised his glass and added, I'll drink on her behalf. While Fu Shenshin was enjoying his drink, Chen Hegua entered and stood at the door, stunned upon seeing Yen. Yen noticed Chen Hegua and invited her to sit with them. However, Chen Hegua bowed down, apologized for disturbing them, and left. He Yen nodded, then turned to Fu Shenshin, saying with a sneering smile, Fu Shenshin, your little admirer ran away. Bring her back soon. Fu Shenshin raised his eyebrows deliberately and said, I've already told her not to look for me anymore. Yen got a bit confused and asked him, and what does that mean? You can't be that. Fu Shenshin interrupted her mid-sentence, saying, it's nothing. She looked at Fu Shenshin and said, Fu Shenshin, I need to explain to her that she's no longer allowed to pester you. He Yen told Xiao Wu brusquely, Xiao Wu, take me to her. While walking, Xiao Wu spoke in defense of Fu Shenshin, don't be angry with Brother Xing. It's really not his fault. It's always the young girls who pester him. Brother Xing has never done anything to provoke them. As we all know, Sister Yen is the one he truly cares about. He Yen asked him in a low voice, Xiao Wu, tell me honestly, did Brother Xian have any involvement with that girl or not? This question left Xiao Wu perplexed, and he replied, I don't know for sure. I didn't sleep in the same bed as him. He Yen curled her lips with sarcasm, and without saying anything more, she just pushed the door open. Upon hearing the door, Chen Hegua's face initially brightened, thinking it was Fu Shenshin. However, her expression dimmed when she saw that it was He Yen. She then turned directly to Chen Hegua and asked, do you have a mobile phone? Chen Hegua was bewildered by the question and asked subconsciously, what? He Yen urged Chen Hegua, give me your phone. Chen Hegua was confused but reached out and handed her the phone. He Yen didn't waste a second and immediately called Tian. As soon as Tian picked up, He Yen urgently said, Tian, it's me, He Yen. Listen, Fu Shenshin is not a good man. You must not marry him. Fu Shenshin is the one who's been tormenting me, he's a criminal. While she shouted all this, Fu Shenshin suddenly grasped He Yan's hand from behind and threw the phone to the ground. However, Yen refused to give up and continued to cry into the microphone, Fu Shenshin is a murderer. You must not be with him. He's a liar, don't marry him. Fu Shenshin was so infuriated that he crushed the phone under his foot. Chen Hegua looked at him in disbelief. Fu Xinqing then turned to Chen Hegua and ordered with a smile on his face, "Go out." Chen Hegua stared at him in disbelief and stammered, "Brother Fu." Fu Xinqing's cold voice repeated, "I told you to go out." Chen Hegua's face darkened, and she left in silence. Fu Xinqing released He Yan's hand with a smile on his face. His lips curled even higher as he mockingly asked her, "He Yan, what do you think she will choose, love or friendship?"